In a traditional village, there used to be those who were called elders. They were seen as the repositories of experience, wisdom, which they wanted to share with succeeding generations.
Wisdom isn't an old guy on the top of a mountain with a loincloth and waist-length hair. Wisdom, to me, isn't an answer anyway. Wisdom is a question. It's like your mother saying, "Where have you been to this time of night?" The question was the answer. She didn't want you to tell her. And I think that's where wisdom is. It's in the constant questioning of where you are. And when you stop wanting to know, you're dead. You're walking, but you're dead.
Yes, into angazibona ngathini. Lona lichenjekile alisesengilo ngoba angithi lokhaya umntwana nalele esile kwagangileko uthathiswa zumthuso uthi ungasayenza linto.
Wisdom is about experience. Your experiences in your life, which hopefully would include risk-taking and being somewhat adventurous.
I suppose, importantly, risk it. Go for it. You know, life always gives you another chance, another go at it. It's very important to take enormous risks and do the most daring.
You don't stop doing things because you get old. You get old because you stop doing things. People say you're very good for your age or something. I say, well, I haven't got time to grow old. I just don't have time. Far too busy.
I had thought, now when I get old, there's going to be this sort of blissful sitting back and just feeling wise. Couldn't have been more wrong. Old age is a second adolescence.
I get sillier as I get older, so I don't know what wisdom means. I can only kind of pass on something that I've been acquainted with and let whoever it is pick the bones out of it. I don't know anything about wisdom, really.
I had a very, very clear picture of what the world was when I was in my early 20s, and I knew how to fix it up, and I knew what everybody should do. And then by the time I was in my early 30s, I had a totally different picture of what the world was and how to fix it up and what everybody should do. And then it happened again when I was about 45. So I reached the point where I looked back and I said, God, I had a very complete and lucid philosophy of life 3 times in my life, and 3 times I've abandoned them. I said, so what do I live by now? And one of the things I try to do is not to believe in too much.
If you think of wisdom as this big pot that people have been putting stuff in for thousands of years, somebody invented a safety pin and threw that in the pot. When I was a kid, somebody put the Salk vaccine in the pot to ward off polio. Maybe during your lifetime, somebody will put an HIV vaccination in the pot, and then somebody puts music in the pot, and they put theater in the pot. There's all this stuff that goes in the pot.
Knowledge is really the most important thing. Without knowledge, there is nothing that can come out of any value. Fill your brain with as much as possible information that you can.
It's not about brains. It's not about the accumulation of knowledge. It's about being decent. If you can be pleasant and nice, you're going to be conned, absolutely for sure. But in the long run, over 75 years, it's a better journey.
There are 3 words that will open any door. Any door. Door of the building, and door of the mind, door of the heart. Any door you like to think. 3 words. Thank you and please.
Everyone has something to contribute that comes from them. Giving and sharing and gentility and graciousness is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength.
I never try to impart wisdom because I feel I don't have much really. But I do love to share the passion, the love, the ecstasy through my music.
There was an experiment done with mice, and they wanted to know what conditions caused the brain to really grow. So they took one mouse and they put him in a cage, and they gave him everything he wanted. And they put another mouse in a cage. He had everything, but he had to run a treadmill. The third mouse, they put him in a cage, and twice a week they took him out, put him through a maze. He had to go up a pole, and he'd be 20 feet above a tub of water below, and, enough to put a little edge to it. And they had MRI'd the brains of these mice, and afterwards they sliced up the brains to look at dendrite growth. Well, the mouse that had everything, he didn't grow a single dendrite. The mouse that had to run, he grew dendrites, but he didn't connect them. And the mouse that had to survive, he grew a lot of dendrites and connected them all. If the brain is going to grow, you gotta live. You gotta really live.
One thing about when you're playing a match in tennis is that you can't say, stop, I want to do another take, or can I play that over? One of the things it taught me is every ball that comes to me, I have to make a decision. And I have to accept responsibility for the consequences every time I hit a ball.
Life lesson for me that was given to me by an old friend who was like the elder in my tribe, I called him. He made me understand how other people saw me. It was painful at first to understand it. The most important thing a person can do is to understand how they're coming across. And if you're full of baloney, they know it, right? People usually know it. But if you don't know that they know it, you're wasting your time.
I think a single person can start by perhaps liking himself or herself. Wisdom could very well start with a little perspective.
I think of myself as a grain of sand. You're just a grain of sand. And you can make a difference, because if you ever walked around with a grain of sand in your shoe, it's not comfortable. All you have to do in your life is go for broke at every point. And when you're done, you would not have changed everything. But you, as that grain of sand, have done what you were called to do.
Serve others. Almost the unfailing recipe for happiness and success. It is more blessed to give than to receive, because in giving, although it doesn't seem so, you receive.
What you have to do is to remain true to that which you believe in. That's a play, isn't it? You've got to get through the third act. You really have. And you've got to finish as strongly as you began. And if that's the proposition, then get to work.
I always thought that inspiration is for amateurs. The rest of us just show up and get to work. If you wait around for the clouds to part and a bolt of lightning to strike you in the brain, you're not going to make an awful lot of work. But if you just get to work, something will occur to you, and something else will occur to you, and something else that you reject will push you in another direction. I work every day. I work essentially, now that my children are grown and out of the house, I work essentially 365 days of the year. I work Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, it doesn't make any difference. And, the pleasure I get and the momentum that comes from just keeping working. Any day that you don't do any painting is a totally lost day. Any day that you just do a little something, all those little pieces of something add up.
I think the happiest way of life is to be developing or making things, whether they're making ideas or they're making products and just making things, growing things.
I'll write from 6:30 in the morning for 12 hours, and I won't even get up, not for a cup of tea or anything. It is, for me, a total period of concentration. And at 6 o'clock, or when the 12 hours are up, bang, a curtain comes down. And I don't think a thing about what I've done all day. It's all over.
I usually work from 9:30 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. and occasionally later for, on average, 6 days a week. If I weren't doing that, I'd be very unhappy indeed. The idea of retirement is ridiculous. Retirement means that you need less sleep, 2 hours less sleep as you get older. Therefore, you can increase your productivity by perhaps 15%. That's not widely understood.
One of the reasons I haven't slipped into some sort of retirement is I always feel like I'm learning something new all the time. I suppose there was a time in my life when I was doing westerns and on the plains of Spain with Italian companies that I could have stayed there and probably knocked out a dozen more of them. But there was a time when I said, no, that's enough of that.
A new idea is obsolete like in seconds. I just said it and now it's obsolete. Intuitively, when I see something that I've done before, I go away from it.
Yes, I don't know where the ideas come from. They come from outer space, or from God, if you like, or from my subconscious mind. But I never go out self-consciously looking for a story. The story has to come to me. They haven't let me down yet.
You could go for months and not find a thing that excites you. That's a very, very tricky thing to even talk about because it's it's like making love. Sometimes you can do it and sometimes you can't.
One of the things I learned, of course, was never to hoard ideas and keep them back because either they're not so relevant or they've gone stale or whatever it is. So pour them out.
The easiest thing in the world, if you're very talented, is to take that for granted, which you must never, ever do. And the people who I've interviewed, who I've admired most of all, have never done that at all. They've continued working and working and believing all the time that they're not quite there.
I've never, ever, in 51 years, done a play that has come easy to me. I've always had to. There's always been a jump in it before I've gone into it. But I like to push myself to the fear level of going to fall right off the cliff. It's frightening anyway, having to act, I think. And the more you do, the more frightened you get. But there is something about the fear that's absolutely wonderful.
Most of us give up too early. Failure is an absolute essential in life. If we never failed, how could we possibly succeed? Because we could only extend ourselves to the limit of what we know. Failure teaches us what we don't know. Of course you're going to fall down. Of course you're going to. But it's your way, and when you get to the end, you'll know something. Persistence.
Acting has that little fatality in it. You know, you could fail horribly here. It's a little death, you know. And if it doesn't scare you, then don't do it because you ain't going to do any good. And embracing that uncertainty is actually the creative process. That's what gives you the juice to go.
There's no mistake if you can't resolve it, whether it's in your music or in your life. And sometimes the mistake elevates you into a different circumstance that can be better. What you hope to be in is complete, total concentration. And when it hits, it's great. If you're in what we call the zone.
When I was playing with Charles Mingus, 24-year-old hayseed in New York City, which I was, playing with these giants, I was in the middle of playing my French horn, and the cash register went, blah, 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 blick a ding! And I went, oh. I got confused. Mingus said, come on, man. He said, don't pay any mind to that cash register. He said, next time that happens, play off the cash register. I said, what? He said, use that as part of the music. If you're playing, piano player goes blockety-block, the drum is going, and you hear bucket-a-bucket-ding, put that into the music and answer it. Go bit-it-boo-boo-bong.
Collaboration is really sharing a philosophical platform, so, we have something in common there, and to have elective affinities. Collaboration doesn't mean really holding a pencil with two hands, on each other, fighting, not this way, that way, and so. The inspiration comes out completely from the problem at hand.
Exactly.
So it's amazing, every problem, every issue we call it problems. Every project, every situation has its own peculiarities and automatically triggers a way to interpret that or to solve that.
Far more interesting than problem solving is problem creation. How do you back yourself into a corner where nobody else's answers are applicable, where nothing else fits? And if you ask yourself an interesting enough question, your solution will by nature be personal.
Your best work is your expression of yourself. Now, you may not be the greatest at it, but when you do it, you're the only expert in it. When I teach students in architecture, I try to get them to understand that they have a signature. Their body, their hand-eye coordination, their biological whatever makeup does make them write their name differently than I write my name.
Education can sometimes avoid that you discover yourself. And then you go the way you were taught, instead of discovering what you really want to do.
Uyabona le mvale bekade kungcono ngoba mawu uthuma mhlawumbe uthuma umntwana uyakhamba uyokwenza leyo ntwana yenza nje uyakhamba ukwenza leyo uyayibona ndaba.
I hate to say this because it's discouraging perhaps for some young people who are looking for a quick fix to write. If you're going to be a writer, it's like if you're going to be an opera singer. An opera singer, I'm sure, is born with special vocal cords, and you could have as many singing lessons for the rest of your life and you will never be an opera singer. Now, you will never be a writer unless you are born with certain qualities.
Stand-up comedy, it's not a choice you make to do. It chooses you. I was doing it when I was a little boy at school, and then when I was an apprentice welder, I was trying to be a funny apprentice welder. When I was in the army, I was trying to be a funny soldier.
There has to be a certain gift in place, and there has to be a certain intellect in place. You can't get to wonderful without passing through all right. You can't skip from not being able to function all the way over to running the whole show.
And if you happen to have talent, then you take that technique somewhere with your talent and you create new things. Often you reject all of the technique, like in panning, you pan and you reject everything. But I mean, the fact of rejecting, imply that you have acquired it. Otherwise, there is nothing to reject. There is no way that we can escape ourselves. If I give you a recipe and I give 5 people the same recipe, I will have 5 different dishes on the table. I mean, there is no way to escape it. If you have 5 people with the same partition of music playing the same piece, you will hear different sound.
Nobody can teach me who I am. You can describe parts of me, but who I am and what I need, these are things I have to find out myself.
If a person is confident enough in the way they feel or the way they're doing or whatever, whether it's an art form or whether it's just in life, I mean, it comes off fine. You don't have anything to prove or anything to say. You can just be what you are. And that's, I hate to simplify it down to just be yourself, but that's, then people say, well, who am I? Who is myself?
There are times when I would like to be somebody else. I just don't have any other option, Only choice we really have is to be us. We can make attempts at, some of the most frustrating lives are people who can't come to grips with who they are.
My work is an outgrowth of who I am rather than the reason for who I am. We're brought up in a culture where you are what you do. People say, tell me about yourself. You immediately go into your career as if that is a complete and perfect definition of what and who you are.
There's a thing in Buddhism that says, find what you should be doing and do it. And I think it baffles a lot of people, except people who actually did it, who actually were lucky enough to find what they should be doing. And I try to tell my children, I say, just try and see what you're drawn to. When you do something that you feel vocationally drawn to, it's not like a job. It's like what you should be doing. It's your raison d'etre. It's the reason to wake up. And you wake up feeling good in the morning.
Work imposes itself on you as part of its power. You respect it, or you fight with it all your life. If you are grabbed by art, I think you should do whatever comes best to you whether it's a novel or a play or a song, doesn't matter that much as the fact that you are doing something about the situation.
Albert Camus put it best. He said, "The day when I am only a writer, I shall cease to be a writer." You have responsibility as a human being. You can't shut yourself up with your computer in an ivory tower or whatever, an air-conditioned room, it would be the equivalent nowadays, yes. You belong in the world, you have responsibility. You have to have this extreme alertness. You have to have your ears wide open and your eyes wide open.
If you want to either engage in or create public discourse, I would say, do it through the work. If it becomes provocative enough to get people to talk about it, that's probably the best. I think that separating yourself out from your work, I don't know if that's a good idea.
Art represents freedom. If you succeed in confining art to galleries, to the stage, to the concert hall, of course it's active, but that's a primary level of activity. A secondary level, when art becomes part and parcel of society, now that is a dangerous one.
You can, through art, transform your specific condition. It is so clear to me because I was born in a system where that had to be created in the culture.
The community is really an essential ingredient. If I were on a desert island, I would not be one of those artists who poked a hole in his arm with a stick and drew in blood on the back of a leaf. You know, I make work for other people to look at. I mean, I don't do it for therapy. I go to therapy for therapy.
Take your profession seriously. Don't take yourself seriously. If you take yourself seriously, you're not going to be able to move forward and use your best artistic instincts. You're going to be hampered by always wanting to look in the mirror and see if you have enough tuna oil on your hair or something like that.
People have said if you take freedom out of my songs, I'd be speechless, you know, because so many of them deal with that. It was always something I was fighting for in my own personal life. Freedom represented the freedom to be the human being I thought I was supposed to be.
Music transcends all the barrier. Scientists have proved how it can help blood pressure. It has effect on animals, on plants. To me, music is an addiction. It is just like the ecstasy of finding gems in the vast ocean.
There's a million things that I can do with my creative energy. And if I ever feel that one particular part of my energy is not, awake today, then I'll use another part of my energy. So I've never had writer's block, because if I ever thought that I don't want to write today and I'm just not in the mood, that I'll do something else.
The core of it is I care so much about my work. And I can't take it lightly. I've got certain litmus tests, you might say, that if I'm working on something, it keeps me awake at night. And I keep hearing it. That's a good sign.
Take a leaf or a twig or a piece of dung from a horse. Doesn't matter. It's the shadow it casts. It can be wonderful. I mean, talking to you here, I see the quality of your eyes. You've got an amazing expression across here. Well, that'll stay in my vision a long time. And it may come out, I may be painting a bird looking at me, and I'll think of your eyes.
If you put very, very little things on a page, you leave lots of room for the imagination. For me, that has always been the most important thing, the simplicity, and the most difficult thing, I must say.
The moment we were gifted with words, we simultaneously received imagination. We could ask a single sentence, which is called "what if?" That's what it's all about. It's about continuity, telling the story of our people. We don't exist without each other.
It's awfully sad that with our clever brain, capable of taking us to the moon, developing all these sophisticated ways of communicating around the planet, that we seem to have lost wisdom. And that's the wisdom of the indigenous people, who would make a major decision based on how will this decision affect our people 7 generations ahead. And we're making decisions based on the bottom line. How will this affect me now, me and my family now? How will this huge decision affect the next shareholders meeting 3 months ahead? How will this decision I make today affect my election campaign? So although we think we're caring about our children and grandchildren, we're actually stealing their future.
Now that the green moment has arrived, I hope this doesn't become what happens to a lot in America, which is things go into fashion quick. If this thing becomes fashionable, if the word green becomes fashionable, we're going to have a problem. So I hope before too long we can take this headline, global warming, climate change, and break it down into specifics where people can get excited about what they can do about it rather than just saying doom and gloom, global warming.
There's little things that we can do. You know, as one person, plastic bags, start using a bag, the same bag every day that you can wash. Don't run the water, take shorter showers. Try to walk more, try to go transportation on a bicycle more. Try to do things, little things in a daily way as a human being makes a big difference over time because it has a cumulative effect.
You know, you can't really go out and try to tell people to do things. It doesn't really work, you know, because immediately their egos are confronted and their personalities and stuff like that. But if you live that way, because it is a comfortable way for you to live, then that's an example.
Necessity is still the mother of invention, and if we start really needing energy, we'll get it. We have solar, we've got water, we've got all kind of things that we can use, and eventually, if the circumstances get serious enough, which I really believe they will in the next few years, then I think people will start realizing that there are alternative energies, and you don't have to go around the world starting wars over oil. You know, I was in the Air Force a while, and they had what they called policing the area. And that's where you looked around, and if there's anything wrong here or there, anywhere, where you took care of your own area. If everyone just takes care of their own area, then we won't have any problems.
But it's not just policing your own area, because that can turn into its own ego trip. Look at me, I'm doing something in the environment, rather than saying it's something I have to do because it's necessary. I think we got to stop being so prideful about the fact that we're doing something that the world needs. It's not a matter of pride, it's a matter of dire necessity.
Very most important thing that we can do to try and get out of the mess that we've made on this planet, both social and environmental, is to spend a little bit of time learning and thinking about the consequences of the choices we make each day. Did it affect the environment adversely or animal welfare? Is it good for human health? What do we wear? Where was it made? Did it involve child slave labor or sweatshops? What do we eat? How was it grown? Where did it come from?
For most kids now, a chicken is rectangular. It's got plastic on top and it doesn't have eye and no feet. What is the scariest, I believe, is that a child will decide on his meal according to the color of the box or the label or whatever advertisement can do for a child. You know, so this is scary. It's scary because you should never eat something you cannot recognize to start with.
If you're going to dig a hole and use that pile of dirt for something over here, you got to fill that hole up with something else. Sure, there are people who are digging holes everywhere and ignoring it, and they're wondering why they're getting bad luck all over the place, because they're not paying respect back to Mother Nature and Father Time.
Carbon-producing manufacturing methods, petroleum-based products shouldn't be used, and that's why all the time we're looking for how can we make products out of bamboo, which grows and grows. Designers are servants of the community.
If you go into a gray concrete box with one little window, it's claustrophobic. It's cold. If you put a skylight on it, and you make the window bigger and put a tree outside and put wood on the floor, it gets better.
The biggest change over the 50 years I've been trying to be an architect has been, in a way, the impact of environmentalism. Now you're looking for buildings that capture the sun, absorb the wind, that take the water from the rain or from the heat from the earth and so on, to create a building which is 50% more efficient in energy terms. It's pretty bloody simple.
People should feel good about doing something, whether they're driving a car that's correct, or whether they're recycling, or whether they're seasonally growing their own vegetables, what have you. There's a whole lot of things you can do, and more every day. We should do it and feel good about it. But I don't think we need to post it on a signboard saying, look at me, I'm doing something so unusual, so great. We're just simply doing what we should have done a long time ago. 30, 40 years ago, we could have seen, well, where are we putting all of our energy, all of our financial momentum is going into non-renewable energy sources, oil, coal, gas. And here you have renewable energy sources right over here, right around us. We're not even thinking about it, let alone talking about it. So after 30, 40 years, suddenly we come around because we have to wait for a tipping point where health is being affected and communities are polluted and we don't have the water to drink, we don't have the air to breathe. Oh, yeah, okay, now I'll think about it.
We should be careful not to depersonalize the other. Even the person who has committed the most abominable atrocity still remains a child of God.
When I was first elected to Strasbourg, in the European Parliament, I went for a walk. I crossed the bridge in Strasbourg in France to Kiel in Germany, and I stopped and I meditated. I said, there's France, there's Germany. If I'd stood on this bridge 30 years ago at the end of the Second World War, the worst half-century in the history of the world, and if I'd said, don't worry, in 30 years' time, there'll be a united Europe, they would have sent me to a psychiatrist. But it has happened. When you look at conflict, no matter where it exists, what's it about? It's about difference. Difference of race, religion, or nationality. And the answer to difference is to respect it, not to fight about it. Because difference is of the essence of humanity. There's not two human beings who are the same.
Perhaps the most important thing to try and learn is that if you're ever going to get to a solution, if you're ever going to create a peaceful world, you're going to have to ask, what is it possible for the other fellow to do? For your opponent to do? If you're going to stand up and preach at him and say, you've got to do this, you've got to do that, there'll never be an agreement.
One has to understand what the enemy is all about, and that's particularly the enemy's history, the enemy's culture, the enemy's aspirations. If you understand these well, you can perhaps move towards peace.
First of all, when you're the dominant group, you know very little about the subdominant groups. Subdominant groups know a lot about the dominant group. Because if you're the dominant, you're in power, things are good. I'm not going to rock the boat. But we always have a few people, even the establishment, who notice and do care and change things over time.
There was an interesting feature about Parliament in my day, in the apartheid regime. The government had the right to prevent the press from publishing in times of emergency, declared emergency. But if the question and answer came from within Parliament, there was no prohibition. So I was used as a conduit, you might say, by the Institute of Race Relations opposing apartheid, to put the questions to which they wanted the answer, and so did I. How many people shot by the police during the riots in Soweto? How many people have been detained without trial? That sort of thing. So you can imagine how many questions I put.
If a politician always does the right thing, regardless of consequences, he won't survive, he or she won't survive long. On the other hand, if they do the popular thing all the time, there's no point in them being there. The first thing in negotiation is to understand where the person negotiating with is coming from. What are their interests, their concerns? Why are they taking up that position? Because unless you understand that, it'll be very hard to get agreement.
You will have to be prepared to compromise on issues to make progress on anything, and that's sometimes very difficult, particularly with some people. You have to know about history, because unless you understand the history of a situation, you can't ever hope to solve the problems.
Don't think we think about that stuff. We think about now, and we think about instant gratification, and that's about it. For the most part, America is not a deep thinking country. We don't look to the past for any clues about our future.
We need the deep thinker, the person that can think ahead and be creative, and especially not looking so much at the pressures to solve the immediate problem, but looking beyond. If we keep looking only at where our feet are going, we may walk off a cliff.
Most times we human beings can be quite silly, getting to make perhaps the same mistakes that were made by previous generations. We learn from history that we don't learn from history.
I sometimes think it may be unwise to have political leaders who don't understand history and haven't grasped their own history sometimes. So I think history is very important. But it is often the obstacle to overcome, but you must understand the obstacle before you can get rid of it.
I felt when I was in the Army that I had a duty to serve my country, to stand up for the things that I believed we were standing up for. It could be very disillusioning to find that what we were supposedly fighting for in Vietnam wasn't what we were fighting for in Vietnam. I think it was probably that same sense of responsibility that made me come out against the wars.
One of the most interesting new concepts is the responsibility to protect, which does trump sovereignty. If a sovereign does not take care of his or her people, then the international community has a responsibility to protect.
The most important thing, the treasure, to be defended and advocated and followed scrupulously is international human rights law.
Any country has to have at least two categories of objectives. The minimum one is the security of its population. The ultimate one is to realize the aspirations and values of its society. And you can't do one without the other.
If you believe in the law, it applies to everyone. Once you say it doesn't apply to one person or to a group of people, you're really saying, well, I don't believe in the rule of law.
It is absolutely essential that the American democracy refocuses its concerns towards global issues and does not approach its own specific problems on the basis of, to some extent, self-induced fear.
Ultimately, you cannot control people by fear because their ultimate essence is constantly craving dignity. And any creature under fear is an undignified entity. And that the human being has a need for dignity just as like water, like air.
Já myslím, že to vězení mi dalo, nebo mě naučilo vícero věcem. Například jsem si začal lépe uvědomovat, co to je lidská důstojnost a význam lidské důstojnosti. Člověk nemusí být v těch nejhorších podmínkách a může se chovat nedůstojně, a i v těch nejtěžších podmínkách si může zachovat noblesu a důstojnost. Řekl, že je důležité se nepovyšovat nad ostatní. Prostě jsme tam jeden za politiku, jiný za nějaký kriminální trestný čin a chceme-li tam soužít, tak není zapotřebí, aby jsme si něco lhali vzájemně, ale musíme se brát jako lidské bytosti a nepovyšovat se nad jiné kvůli tomu, že člověk tam je třeba právě z důvodů politických.
Always be on the challenging edge of saying we can do better, and that if you are a social citizen, you are responsible for the condition you find yourself in. Any system you're a part of, you're supporting. So if that system is out of balance, then it's not outside of you out of balance. It's not those people over there. You, in some way, help that system to be what it is. And you either are talking to that system and saying, this is good, I like this, or this is absolutely insane, and it needs to be changed.
I grew up in a family that believed in public service, that there was no greater profession. It inspired my brothers. It's been inspiring me, and I find that each day, I can make some small difference. You don't have to be a United States Senator to make a difference. Nurses make a difference. Policemen make a difference. People work with special needs children make a difference.
I don't know if just political change can affect that much in the world. I think it has to be on a direct personal and emotional level, where that we feel a connection with every human being. The change has to be in the heart.
I mean, you think just how many children we would have saved from unnecessary deaths, preventable deaths, if we didn't spend so much money on defense. There are things that must evoke our anger, showing that we care. It is what we do with that anger. You know, if we direct the energy, we can use it positively, we can use it in a destructive way.
I think we all have a propensity for incredible violence and incredible love all at the same time. It's one of the human conditions that puzzles me greatly. I've often thought that it would be an interesting experiment to find the violence gene in the human genome and take it out, see what happens. This killing each other, especially in the name of God, is completely unholy to me. I don't understand the mind that says, my God is better than your God, and I'm going to kill you to prove it.
One of the biggest profits is war. And if you're in the financing business or in the bullet business, you can start wars, finance both sides, and sell bullets to both sides. That's been going on a long time.
If it weren't for oil and the money that's controlled in the Middle East, we wouldn't be fighting the war that we're fighting today. To see the billions of dollars that are going into the war that could eliminate poverty, provide education with just a fraction of what we're spending on the war.
You don't have to be rich and you don't have to be an army. If you find yourself in a situation that needs to be changed, if you're willing to offer your life for it, you might actually get something done.
You have to be taught to hate. Look how the Nazis taught the Nazi youth movement. That could have been the way we can learn, that we could have taught the love movement.
You can't negotiate peace. Peace is an inside job. It exists somewhere inside, you know. That's the idea of peace spreading, is each individual finds their own peace.
Imagine yourself as an oasis of peace, and imagine these ripples that move away from that center of peace and touch others. We have learned over the many, many years generosity, compassion, gentleness, caring are so much, much more powerful than their counterparts.
You have to have freedom. An artist has to have that. But it's been, I know, tough for my wife because I need utter freedom in what I paint. When I did that series of Helga, she knew nothing about it. They all said that she knew about it. She never knew a thing about it because I knew that she would be upset that I got this lady to take her clothes off, pose in every position I wanted, and utter freedom. I think marriage is a terrific thing, and I think there's certain ethical things you have to do. But if it starts to control you too much, watch out.
I'm awfully bad at talking about love because there's so many different sorts of love. I think an independence within each person is almost essential. I'm not a one for a husband and wife doing everything together. And my husband wasn't interested in anything I was interested in. He liked all his men friends and playing golf and doing things with his father. And it meant that I could go off and do my own thing. And perhaps that's more important than that awful overworked word of love.
I've been married for 40 years. It's not one marriage. By then you've had 4 or 5 totally different marriages. And you hope that you evolve in similar ways, in compatible ways, and that you now have a new reason to be with somebody, but it's going to be different from the previous reasons to be with them.
Musically, of course, marriage is melody and rhythm. But otherwise, I think it's best when you marry at the age of 69, half your age. No, seriously, I think love is the most important thing.
You've got to keep time for your family. My relation with my wife is the most important thing in my life. And fortunately, we love one another, so it's not been difficult.
I think it's a combination of many things. Of course, compatibility. By that I mean sharing, not only just interests. I'm not talking about whether you like going skiing or playing golf or going to the movies. That's very nice, yes. But your political opinions.
My wife had very strong principles. Therefore, if she saw me deviating, she would immediately challenge me. And I wasn't let to get away with anything. If a compromise was necessary in order to achieve another objective, all right, but I wasn't allowed to drift by her.
People sometimes think that I am radical in my political stance. I'm nowhere near as radical as my wife. I mean, she can get very, very, very hot under the collar about injustices. You share most of the most important things of your life. You share the same ideals.
The thing that was good for us is that we met very young and we've been together. And so we grow together in our interest, in what we like, in what we don't like. Naturally, you have your own opinion, you know, and your own opinion many times are very good because they're good because you sort of, you know, balance the dreams of Massimo that is always flying high and what is reality, you know. I sometimes think they have to take it down a bit.
Marriage, I've no idea what makes it work. Everything's against it. Everything on its side is against it. And every one is different from the other one. What makes my marriage work is that she makes it work. And I get the good attendance medal. I just show up. I don't have affairs. I like the idea of having sex with strangers, but I don't do it. And I'm very boring sexually, you know. I'm not adventurous sexually. I think that would have killed my marriage if I was, because I'd have to have thought about it. I'd have to come up with ideas. You know, I'm not very good on that front, you know. I treat it pretty much as the last household chore of the day because I want so little from it. So, and I get it. She will kill me.
Don't take the person for granted. Don't ever think that they're going to come back to you just because you happen to be married. Always have to make the effort, and hopefully not make the effort recognizably.
Trying to keep the romance going in your marriage. It was the simple things, little gifts, remembering anniversaries. We still, all of us, like to be loved, want to be affirmed.
The purest expression of love is to cook for someone, whether it's your mother or your lover or your child or a friend. You cannot cook indifferently, otherwise the food won't come through the right way. I mean, there is a great deal of love which goes into the making of food. I would advise people to sit down with the family, with the children around the table every day. It's an absolutely necessary thing to do to be happy in life, you know.
The secret of a long marriage, it's luck. It's luck. No more than that. And you work hard at it, and it does help if you have a partner who loves you. And my wife's much brighter than I am, and things. And she saw me doing silly things, and then she'd just stand back and say, "Well, it'll come back eventually. If you hang on long enough, it'll all get back to where it was."
I'm married to a very strong woman, of intelligent. She's been a great backer of my work. I remember when we first were married, I got word that the Saturday Evening Post was interested in getting me to do something for them. So I did this painting, just purely out of my imagination, looking down through a buttonwood tree. Phone rang. It was editor-in-chief. He said, "We all love your painting and we want to commission you to do 10 covers a year for the Saturday Evening Post." And Betsy looked at me and she said, "If you accept that, I'm leaving for good. You'll never be a painter." That was it. I turned it down.
You can't face a situation and go, "Oh, page 43, oh, that's what I do." There is no booklet when it comes to kids. You can only raise kids as openly and as honestly as possible.
When I was a parent, I was very, very busy with all those book covers. So in that time, I was a very bad father, I think. I just saw my children in the evening just before they went to bed, because I was just working hard every day, day after. And nowadays, now I am a grandparent, I take more time for them.
Being a parent is one of the most difficult and demanding and rewarding things that you can possibly be. But you really are responsible for the day-to-day upbringing of your child, and you have to do some sanctions, and you have to try to figure out when to reward. With the grandkids, you can just reward.
I take my granddaughters now, I've got 5 of them, I take them to good restaurants. I say, "This is a good restaurant. Now, if you have a boyfriend and he doesn't bring you here, don't go out with him." You tell it, you've got to go to the Ivy. Tell him you want to tea at the Ritz. I mean, don't look around. I mean, but grandparents can do that, you see. You can affect their life. You can make them dream.
There's little Teddy, medium Teddy, and I'm big Teddy. And little Teddy loves Fenway Franks, the Frankfurters that they sell at Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts. And when we went last summer, I saw him eating Fenway Franks, and he had the ketchup and the mustard and the relish on his nice clean shirt to show it. And I said, "How many Fenway Franks have you eaten, Teddy?" And he said, "2, Grandpa, just 2. And then he went down like this.
People say, "Have you got a favourite?" And I truly haven't. I just am very fond of them all. It's a really much easier one than mother-child relationship, because you're not responsible for an awful lot of things. You can just enjoy it, and you can have it for a day, your grandchild, and then you can give it back at the end of the day, and you can go and pour yourself a drink, which is lovely.
I'm very, very fond of my grandchildren, and I think they're tolerably fond of me. Of course, they've got their own lives to live, but their lives include quite a large slice of Grandpa. I mean, grandparents are not like parents.
As you get older, you have less energy. Coping with children might be difficult. Coping with grandchildren who you see frequently, but not all the time, you can manage that all right. And I'm lucky, I have 10 grandchildren, and all of them have grown up near to me in Dublin.
Most people seem to think that being a grandparent is the better experience, because I think you have more of just the pure pleasure and less of the responsibility. With me, I guess I haven't had that much of the responsibility with either one, but I have nothing but the love and affection of them. My experience with my 8 children is very little different from that with my 6 grandchildren. The best part of it all is that they all love each other. I think that I could just step out of the picture and they'd be fine.
When you have a little child and it's there, do you look at that child and say it has to become something? It's already something. It's already what it is. But the miracle is life itself. It's not in heaven. It's not in this. It's right now.
It's the most wonderful thing to be a grandmother. You sort of know why you're around. Because grandmothers have a special biological place in nature.
love something. I think we've got to learn to love something deeply. I think it's love. It sounds sentimental as hell, but I really think it is.
Life is not perfect. It never will be. You just have to make the very best of it. And you have to open your heart to what the world can show you. And sometimes it's terrifying, and sometimes it's incredibly beautiful. And I'll take both. Thanks.